It's Monday and shit is still wild out there. And welcome to another episode of Luke, Who Is Your Father? I'm your host, Ricky.
This is Jules.
I'm Kenny.
And we are so happy to have you back. We are well underway with season 2. If you'd like to hear our origin story, go back and listen to season 1. We are triplets separated at birth who reunited and then went on the hunt for our biological father. And this season, we have turned the mic over to our guests who we have been so lucky to have, and do want to gently remind you that all experiences and opinions shared are those of our guests. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we sort of agree. You can find us on pretty much any social media platform. We are on TikTok at Luke Who Is Your Father Pod, at Ricky Jump, and at Jules Who Is Your Father. We're on Instagram at Luke Who Is Your Father, at Ricky Jump, and at Kenny K23. And you can, unfortunately, watch all of these episodes on YouTube at Luke Who Is Your Father. Those get pretty fun, and they're more uncensored than the ones that we put out on Spotify. Not
Less
only
edited.
for brevity, but for fun. We so appreciate your support so far this season and last season. We're really loving all of the reviews. If you could take a minute to just like, subscribe, rate, review. 5 stars would be nice. 4 stars will do. The rest you can keep to yourselves. And don't forget that there is a little box where you can actually put your thoughts and opinions and make sure that they are flattering. We do also do Q&As and polls on occasion. Our most recent one was, can you hear this podcast in your car? That is feedback that we've been getting, but I want to make sure before we make any wild changes to the mix that it is in fact a common problem that people can't hear in their car. So go ahead and go and tell us that. Other than that, I think it's time for me to throw it over to Kenny K23 so she can ask us the question of the day.
Oh, shit.
All right. Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Jules.
That's me.
As the people.
I don't know if I got to introduce myself earlier.
I know. We did. But I don't know if y'all know that I call Julianne because Jules is weird to me. Anyway.
Kenny's weird to me.
Yep.
And I'm
Jules.
just Ricky.
Rick.
Oh my God. The Scump Sisters.
Yeah.
The Scump Sisters are back and worse than ever.
Yep. Happy to be here, folks. Jules, what is your favorite vacation that you have ever been on?
Ooh. I mean, recency bias probably has to factor in here just because I do tend to go on fewer vacations than my lovely sisters. My recent vacation to Panama and that was, I do believe that that's the first vacation I've ever gone on with a significant other alone. I think. I'm pretty sure. Yes, it is, Luke. Yes, it is. We went down to Panama, which was not, I think when people hear that, they might think that that is a rather random place to end up. We were planning on going to Chile or Argentina for a ski trip. And then upon some further research, we discovered that we were nervous that there might not be good snow, which would have been terrifying. Or not terrifying, just really disappointing. So we literally just pulled up Google flights, and flights to Panama round trip were like $348 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we went there and it was so fun. Absolutely beautiful. The weather was amazing. The people are so sweet. I got my little frog tattoo because the frog is the national animal of Panama.
National Amphibian of Panama.
I think it's the national animal. And it was just a great time. We did a little island hopping and overall just really easy, vacation. And I think we decided that we are easy travelers together, which is so important.
That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Ricky, what is your favorite vacation that you've ever been on?
Does Colin make it this far into the podcast? This would be a fun time to find out.
Oh my test. It's a test.
Because I do feel obligated to answer that my favorite vacation ever was the vacation in which I got engaged. So Colin and I did go on vacation this summer, took a little Euro trip, went to Amsterdam, Cologne, Germany, Paris, and Switzerland. Our favorite out of those was Cologne, Germany. So I have to advise, if you haven't been and weren't considering going, you should. Aside from that, my favorite vacation I've ever taken was definitely to northern Italy. Me and my friend Lizeth, who didn't know each other at the time at all. We had just started working together. I knew her birthday was on New Year's Eve, and I was like, is that a terrible birthday? And I saw Scott's cheap flights come through for really cheap flights to Italy. And I walked into her office and I said, do you want to spend your birthday in Italy? And she said, yeah. And we booked a trip to Italy. And that was the first time we'd spent one-on-one together. We went to...
That is a choice. That is so brave. I'm saying, and obviously it turned out very, very well.
It did turn out well. And it's not the first trip that I've taken with a woman like that. Like it being our first one-on-one time hanging out ever. I've just got balls of steel. What can I say? But we went to Venice and we went to Turin and we went to Bologna. And if we went anywhere else, then I cannot remember. But Turin and Bologna are the only places I've ever been where they have handed me a plate of food and I have wept. So let me just perpetuate the fat narrative.
Oh, no.
That was a great trip. Kendall, what's your favorite vacation you've ever taken?
All right. My favorite vacation, and I love that I ask a question and I don't know the answer. So I am going to go...
Obviously, Portugal.
I know, right? Although I did have a lovely second half of my Portugal trip where I got to kind of explore Paris a little bit more, which was lovely. Let's go with Lake Powell.
There you go.
So pretty much all of the Lake Powell trips that we ever took, even the ones wherein we burned our friend
To a crisp.
Love
you, John McNamara.
Love you, John McNamara. But our parents really knew how to do Lake Powell up, and they would do a theme for the whole trip, and then within the trip, each night, each family had a different theme that they had to plan. And I've been 3 times in my life, and all of them, I'm going to say, were my favorite trip. Because
This
Lake
was
Powell
all
is
while
just
I was
beautiful and wonderful.
hidden away in my modular home in my wood paneled walls. Good for you. Good for you.
But yeah, just camping under the stars, beautiful.
Yeah. Lake Powell is absolutely stunning.
Sleeping on top of the houseboat.
Sleepwalking on top of the houseboat.
Yes.
Stepping in human feces.
Fireworks. Yeah.
And dragging it onto the houseboat.
Strapping flashlights to squirt guns and have raging wars against the mice.
Yep. Bats in the boat.
Bats, yeah. All
Ricky.
great fun. See?
Kind of glad I missed out. Speaking of raging wars, our guest this week, we are so excited to introduce. She is prolific on the internet. She is your donor conceived person of TikTok. Her name is Laura High. She was donor conceived and has gone on to find a lot of information about the industry that I think that you will all find rather disgusting and riveting and like it needs reform, which we will get into. But we are super excited to bring her on this week. She is going to talk about her conception story and then really just going balls deep after she found out how
literally
how much that industry isn't regulated, how much it should be. And she is also a stand-up comedian. So the entire interview is sure to be delightful. And she actually has a really exciting event coming up that we'd love to plug before we bring her on.
She does. Her husband, I just want to throw out there, is also a stand-up comedian in New York City. I would die to be a fly on the wall in their house. So Laura she has helped organize the first ever protest for donor conceived people. It will be in New Orleans on October 15th. It's the Conference for the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And they are responsible essentially for the lack of legislation or just activism in the donor conceived community. And they have never had a donor conceived person on the panel at this conference. So Laura is going to be, she will be there on October 15th with bells on. She's have just put so much effort into the organization of it. Please, it's imperative that there are as many people there as possible in support of her. ABC News, ABC is going to be there televising it. So if reach out to Laura, we will of course plug her socials, and she is so diligent about like responding to every single thing that she gets on social media, which is amazing in and of itself. And we cannot wait to support her in this endeavor. So again, October 15th, New Orleans, donor conceived people protest. Be there or be square.
Yes, and showing further support with her, we are happy to welcome her to the Luke, Who Is Your Father stage to tell her own story. Without further ado, here is Laura High.
Okay, you're good.
Hello, we are here with Laura High today. Laura, welcome to Luke, Who Is Your Father. How you doing?
I am doing very well, very excited to be on. Thank you for having me. How are you all doing?
Of course, and thank you for coming on. I think we're doing pretty good today.
We're so excited.
We are so excited to have you. I have been following your content since I started making similar content. So that would have been for 9 months now.
Fantastic.
Have just people constantly tagging you in our content, trying to get your attention. And I was like, one day. And then it happened.
It happens. I mean, it really, because I get tagged in like literally anything that somebody could attach to donor conception. They're like, what? And so I really try and go through all of it. But it is a lot, and I easily miss stuff like all the time. And I always feel bad because I really, like on TikTok and on Instagram, people send me messages, but because of like the filtration system, you don't get all of them. They go through different folders.
Yeah.
And I really, really try hard to go through all of them. Because like there's been like some messages that I've gotten where I'm just like, I open it, and literally this happened a couple of months ago, where I just was like, oh, that story could create legislation. Oh shit. I'm glad I checked. Oh my God. And immediately message back, and I'm like, can you provide proof? Oh my God, you can. I guess I'm going to make an emergency Zoom call right now with some lawyers.
That's
so
incredible.
It's hard to get everything, because that's just what I've learned is you never know who is going to end up in your inbox or who you tagged into.
Yeah.
So
Well, I love it. I'm glad that we finally got your attention. And you kind of led us into your introduction. So in case you're all not familiar with Laura, she is a stand-up comic and actor. And what's taking up a lot of her time these days is being a donor conceived advocate with her own podcast, Insemination. And she has quite the tale to tell that has led you down some deep, dark rabbit holes. So we usually like to take it from the top, but I didn't mean to make you feel bad about missing being tagged in our content. It was those early aughts of the comments were a nightmare landscape anyway. So I'm glad we found you when we did.
absolutely. I always end up finding community members at some point, and it always ends up happening.
Yeah. And at the right time.
Yes, at the right time. And you're calling in from your own studio in Manhattan today.
I am. We are in my basement that my husband and I built, and we are surrounded by my husband collects vintage comedy albums, and then we've got some of like our stand-up posters around here.
If you guys are not on YouTube, get on YouTube and look at Laura's studio. It's so cool.
Jelly.
Is he a comic as well?
He is. Let me hold on one second. You can see. There's his poster and my poster.
Oh,
So
wow.
cool.
A
Yeah.
match made
Got
in heaven.
my posters there. That was that one right behind my head. First time I ever headlined. And then that green one was I headlined again. And then the green one of him was first time he headlined.
And it looks like his name is Dave Colombo.
Dave Colombo. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you will absolutely see him. We do sketches and dumb videos together.
I love it. Well, if it hasn't become clear, I found Laura on TikTok. That's where she does a ton of her. She does great joke telling, a lot of storytelling, and a lot of her educating people, I would say, on the darker aspects of the
I try to
fertility industry.
Sometimes the education has a little bit of a bite to it, depending on what needs to be said.
Well, I love that about you. You and I share that in common. Sometimes we gotta serve someone up on a silver platter on TikTok, which is always fun.
Yeah. Sometimes people are feeling a little uppity about something that doesn't affect them or they've never thought about it a minute in their lives, and they feel like they're an expert. And sometimes it's just like, yo, sit back down. This is not how we do. Let's learn some manners. This is not how you treat people. So go fuck off. And because I'm a stand-up comic, I view them as hecklers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, no, you shut the heckler down.
Healthy. Probably a healthier viewpoint for me to take from here on out.
Do some paradigm shifts.
Yes, some paradigm shifts. But yeah, I mean, you have your own story to tell, which then really led you to all of the discoveries you've made and then all of the changes that you push more moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were talking off air, it's a different viewpoint than we've had on the podcast so far. You are by far, without question, no room for argument, the most educated person that we've had on the industry on our podcast. Up till now, it's been pretty much straight storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd love to just kind of get into that with you starting at the beginning and then just let the rhythm take us where it will, if that sounds good to you.
I am down. Hit me with your best shot. What do we want to talk about?
Amazing. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Westchester County, which is about 30 minutes north of here. And all of my parents' fertility treatments were in New York City. In the 80s, they started fertility treatments in 1985. But I grew up 30 minutes north of here. Very, boring suburban town.
I don't really think any part of the East Coast is boring, but maybe that is me idealizing it.
I mean, well, I guess it's just very, it was a very passive aggressive upbringing. It was where I grew up, watch Stepford Wives. And instead of being like, ooh, that's like a horror movie, my town was like, how do we do that?
Oh my gosh. Oh, no.
Do we just
watch
everybody or just specific people? Like, how does it happen? I grew up in Rye, New York specifically. If anyone knows, it's the home of Playland, which is like the oldest theme park, I believe, like on the East Coast or maybe even in the United States. I don't know how to explain it, but like I never fit in. It was just a very instant, I never fit in. I was always the weird kid. And you like looking back, I'm always like, oh no, I was a stand-up comic. That's absolutely what it was. But in terms of like Westchester and Rye, where I came up with my like how I was like making jokes and trying to like, be weird and silly and goofy, was just like, that's not in style. No, we don't do humor. No.
Was it we don't do humor or little girls don't do humor?
Oh, little girls don't do humor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very buttoned up.
You should be much more focused on like matching your kids to your
Wow.
So were you happy to be the weird kid?
I'm now happy.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I was not, because all I could sense was, why don't I have friends? And it was very hard because I mean, I did have some friends, but they were very like, I had very few friends. It was the friends that were just like, oh shit, she's kind of cool. Who were like okay with being like friends with the weird kid. But it was very hard growing up because all I wanted was friends. All I wanted was siblings, actually. Specifically, I wanted siblings. I begged my parents for siblings. And I had obviously no idea why I didn't have siblings. Now I found out, but I'm like, oh, that's why. My mom absolutely wanted more. She was hoping that I was actually going to be a twin, given how much weight she gained so quickly in her pregnancy, and like how much her pregnant belly like popped so fast. I think she said 3 months in, she was already in like full maternity garb. That's like,
wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think she gained like about 80 pounds, and she has no idea like if that was just her chemistry or if it potentially was like the fertility drug she was on. We had no clue. But she was just like, yeah, you ballooned me immediately. And she was really hoping I was a twin. She really wanted, because she knew that like this was it. This was the one shot. And she wanted lots of kids.
That's it was, I mean, there's part of it that's funny, right? Distantly funny to look back and be like, man, I was really pestering her for a sibling. And she wanted to give me one so badly. And also heartbreaking for both you and her, I'm sure. My mom was pregnant with triplets and didn't know until she was 7 months. And when she was
really,
yeah. And here we are. And then she was on her way to her appointment and like stopped in to a flower shop, I think. And a guy who didn't speak English sort of rubbed his belly at her. And she was like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And he said, no. And
2 babies.
Like indicating that there were at least 2 in there. And she was like, well, I don't know. I'm on my way to find out, actually. But so it did not become obvious that she was pregnant with multiples until like the very end of her pregnancy, unfortunately. Yeah. Wow. So different experiences for them, but the same experience for you and I in wanting desperately 4 siblings.
I wondered if that was like we knew they were out there and like I mean, it's like, you know, we could totally go into the cosmos with this, but there is a part of me that's like, oh, I think I knew they were out there. I genuinely do, and I just in a weird little way, and I just couldn't explain it. And in the same way, I know we're sort of jumping ahead, but like I knew something was weird. I knew something. I was like, was I adopted? Was I separated? Was I switched at birth? Like what? Even though I saw pictures of my mom being pregnant, I saw pictures of her like essentially giving birth, and my mom and I look identical. Identical. I'm a carbon. We do joke that like there wasn't a sperm donor. They just copied and paste because of how much we look alike. But and so like I knew something was up, and so I'm just always wondering like, did I just somehow know, and I just was yearning for them.
That's when my parents told Kendall and I, because we didn't always know about Ricky. We didn't find out about her until we were 8, 9. And they have said several times that when they told me, specifically Ricky and I are identical. We found out recently, but when they told me, there was less of a surprise than they were expecting. And they've said it almost seemed like you had a feeling. So I know exactly what you mean.
It's weird. Like there's just so much stuff with this that like, I do think that there is a lot when it comes to adoptees and donor conceived people where it's like there is so much about the human instinct. Right. I don't know another word that it's like, I do wish they would really put the money behind it and really study it.
Yeah. Yes. We've been begging for that. Did you keep a journal by chance?
As a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Here and there. Yeah.
Okay. I would love to see if you were ever journaling and saying something along the lines of, I feel like there might be more of me out there. You know what I mean?
I pretended there was a lot. Like when I like you would do pretend play as a kid. I absolutely did. Like I had long lost family and stuff. Like it was a huge part of like, because I played by myself a lot, and which I hated because I wanted siblings to play with. And I always pretended like I did. And it really is just, again, like how much of it was really coming from no, I knew that there was more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. You're right. I hope they do put the dollars behind it at some point, because you hear about like the errant twin study here or there, but nothing ever serious or widely encapsulating it all. Okay, so enter your parents. Are they also East Coast native?
They are not, actually. My parents are West Coast native, from Oregon and Washington. And they both ended up, my dad moved here first for college. My dad was in Yale, and then graduated, moved to New York City for work. And my mom ended up, again, finished up her school and ended up moving here for work as well.
Okay. And so you obviously know that they had to go through fertility treatment, but it seems like that's not something that you found out about until later. So what did you tell us about your paradigm growing up, your reality?
Well, actually, I did know at a very young age my parents struggled with fertility. That was the thing that they did tell me. They were like, yep, we struggled for 3 years, which is why I kind of always tell people, if you know your parents struggle with fertility, like they told you were IVF, or they really struggled, that might be their opening way to start the conversation and lay the groundwork. Or that's their way of telling you without telling you. Because my parents told, and I've heard that like across the board with so many donor conceived people, they're like, I knew I was IVF, I just didn't know I was donor conceived. Or I did know my parents struggled with fertility, but I just didn't know that it was donor conception was the end result. So I mean, in grade school, I knew my parents struggled with fertility for 3 years. I completely knew that. I also knew my father's first marriage adopted my half sister. And I never knew why, but I just knew that they adopted her. So like there was definitely some breadcrumbs laid there as well. And again, as I said, I look like a carbon copy of my mom. There was nothing about me that looked like my dad. There was nothing. My dad and I do not look related in the least bit. There is nothing about us that looks remarkably like we stick out of how much we don't look alike.
Do you mind me asking how old were your parents when you were born?
Hold on. My mom was. She was.
Get out the old calculator.
Calculator really fast. I can actually do this. Okay. How old? What year was it? My mom was 33 when she had me. So that means they started fertility treatments when she was 30.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad then was 42.
Because I'm wondering, I think that something interesting that we've noticed over our season, because we didn't set out to have a season of themes, you know what I mean? And we have definitely had a season of themes. And I think if you're looking for kind of Easter eggs or things that should make you perk your ears up a little bit, I think that having children a little bit older is something that we've noticed as well. Mm-hmm. And then your dad had kids from a different marriage, and then had your mom had been married before, had any kids or anything like that?
Marriage. This was my dad's second marriage.
That's what we're seeing a lot too. I mean, I don't think there's any through line there insofar as why the parents had to go through fertility treatment, but I would say 50% of the dads that we've heard about had a previous marriage and previous children in that marriage.
But my sister was adopted, so was right. Not, yes. And that should have been, I thought she was adopted for a different reason. I had no idea that she was adopted because my dad was completely infertile.
Mm-hmm. So you thought then that was a half sister?
Yes. So she is my half sister, but we are not
biologically related.
Not genetically, but I knew at a very young age that my sister was adopted. That was always made, that I always knew. Mm-hmm. And again, my sister and I look exact opposite. I'm 5'5", my sister's 6 foot.
Oh.
She is a gorgeous bombshell blonde, 6 foot, blonde hair, all legs, blue eyes. Like, we do not look like,
Couldn't be me.
stunning model 80s baby, basically. She was gorgeous, absolutely stunning. Still is a beautiful woman to this day. But yeah, total blonde bombshell.
So as you're talking about really yearning for siblings, what was your relationship like with her?
Well, she was 15 years. Sorry, she is 15 years older than me.
Yep.
So when I was born, a couple of years after I got, so we never like lived together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we lived together maybe a year, maybe 2. But we didn't grow up together.
Right.
We had very different upbringings. And the majority of my life, she lived on the West Coast. There was a chunk of my life where she lived on the East Coast, but very, very little. The majority of it, she was always West Coast, and I was always East Coast. And we just have, and we are just very, very different people, like into very different things, have very different interests. She's a complete amazing, like she absolute athlete. Total, like I would say like I'm creative in like a more of a performance way. She's like super crafty, incredibly crafty person. And very different personalities between the two of us. She was the cool kid and I was incredibly annoying. utterly obnoxious. I still am on TikTok. I just get paid to be obnoxious. But she was the popular kid.
Mm-hmm.
How was your relationship with your parents?
So my relationship with my parents, I was always exceptionally close with my mom. That was there immediate from birth. Always there, so close with my mom. My dad, there was always a distance, always a little bit of a distance. And he did like, there were ways that like, he tried, like he was really like, we would like build stuff together. Like we would build a birdhouse. And if I had like a specific thing, like when I was like on the basketball team, he would be there to like, we're going to work on your jump shot. But there was always a little bit of a distance between us. Him and I didn't really actually start bonding till I was probably in high school, was kind of when him and I really started to actually have conversations and actually get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad does the total like boomer dad thing. He was like, that's when you got interesting. Which I feel like every boomer dad says. Wait, that's a universal thing. That's not what donor kids like. That's just boomer dads. And yeah, and then so then in high school we started bonding. Unfortunately, when I was in high school, though, my parents got divorced, so things were getting very tumultuous in my family life. But even despite that, him and he was really trying hard to bond with me during that time, which I really appreciate. Like he was actively really trying to take me out to movies. I was so into theater. So like him and I'm a total music theater nerd. So that's like a big thing him and I did together, was like we would go see shows together all the time. And so he was really, really trying. And he was the one like always picking me up from like theater or debate practice or stuff like that. So we would always just like bond in the car listening to music theater. But that really didn't kick in until I was about 14.
Did you clock when you were younger and you guys weren't as close? Did you clock that? Was it something that you felt strongly about, or is it only in reflection that you noticed that? Or were you like, this is just how dads are?
I think it for me was just how dads were. That's how, it didn't strike me as odd because it seemed like all the dads were that way.
Yeah.
It
Back
didn't-
to the Stepford Wives.
yeah, it didn't like to me. It was like the dads all go to work. I mean, my mom was a working woman as well. My mom is an incredible businesswoman, but and that was a big difference that she had. But she had a job that she could also be a full-time mom as well. But yeah, no, that it didn't strike me as weird in the least bit. All, to me, I grew up in a place where it was like, yep, all dads walk off the train station, they all come home, and that is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Does
And
it seem,
they say
oh,
hi
sorry.
a little bit and then they go to bed.
Does it seem like the divorce is actually what almost made you guys closer because I don't know if there was a fear there and he was making more of an effort specifically because your parents were getting divorced?
I think it added to it. Really what it was, honestly, a big piece of it was this is going to sound a lot more negative than it really is. He was forced to spend more time with me. And I know that sounds weird, but what happened starting when I was 14 was my dad was in between jobs. And so he was doing the pickups from school.
Right.
Whereas, and during that time, my mom's career was like exploding. She was just becoming incredibly successful at that moment. And so my dad was picking me up from school, picking me up from debate, driving me to horseback riding lessons, or picking me up from debate or driving me to debate. He was like, so he was the one, and it was literally, and that was before my parents' separation hit. And just sitting in the car with him for half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, a few times every week, we just were like, well, I guess we're going to talk. What do you like, dude? And it was, and very quickly we were like, oh shit, this is like a cool person. Like,
Yeah,
I
we do like the same
like,
things.
oh, my dad's cool.
Oh,
How did this come from? And I think he kind of almost had the same thing. It was just like, oh shit, she's kind of cool. Like, this is neat. And we bonded quite quickly. But it was because of that pickup time.
yeah.
That we started bonding, and we bonded very quickly.
In everything that you've uncovered since then, have you had a poignant conversation with him about whether he was distant or lacking interest because you were like a weird kid, or because he didn't feel that biological connection to you because you weren't biologically connected?
No, it was never the biological connection. I genuinely believe full-heartedly in my case that I would say our distance when I was younger had nothing to do with the donor conception whatsoever.
Okay.
I genuinely do not believe that. I think it was, I mean, my dad was sad that he had fertility issues. He was sad that that was something that his body just didn't allow him to do. It was sad. But and I think for him, what it was, he was always a little concerned for both my sister and I, because we're both not genetically related to him. There was always a concern of like, are they going to look at me differently? Are they not going to love me? He was always a little scared of, I would say, rejection. But both my sister and I, within easily show like, dude, no, not even a little bit.
What is your understanding of their fertility process? How do you know, and why did he go through with it?
So both my parents had fertility issues. Both of them did. My mom, her thing was, I want kids. She was like, that is what is happening. I want kids. So my dad knew, like, okay, I want to be with her. That is going to happen. One kid. One. And he was like, I'm done. And my dad's issues, I don't know if they could be now, but at the time, my dad's issues could not be fixed. My mom's issues could be fixed. It was, I don't fully, it will, yeah, my mom's issues were, I apologize if I'm using incorrect medical terminology, but my mom got extraordinarily sick when she was going through puberty. Like she had like this like hospital level fever, and like it was really, really bad. And what they found was when they were trying to figure out like why my mom was struggling with pregnancy, when it comes to like the uterus and the ovaries and everything, there are, I believe it's called flagella.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like these like little fingery thingies that grab the eggs. And basically. And my mom's, they found were completely melted together. And they were flapping away all the eggs.
From the
no.
The theory is that fever, while she was going through puberty, melted them together.
Jeez Louise.
That's what they think happened. They're not sure, but they were like, we can't think of anything else that would make sense on why this would happen. And so they had to do, like with my mom, like a full reconstruction.
That is wild. I do need everyone who's not watching the YouTube to know that Kendall could not resist making flagella with her fingers.
It's like
to the surprise of not me or Julianne.
It's like that. It's like the turtles having a tickle fight.
I just want to like add with I don't know if we're gonna get there, but I do want to make sure that I say this because there's a lot of people because it just, my dad is now at this point my biggest fan when it comes to donor conception content. The dude is so unbelievably proud. He's such a political nerd. So as soon as like he found out like I was going to like DC, I was going to the Raymore building, he was like, what the fuck are you serious? And then he found out that I ran around the Raymore building in a sperm costume. He was just like,
that's my girl.
Like right now I'm helping in New York to get the Donor Conceived Persons Protection Act passed. And it was the woman who spearheaded the bill connected me with like the two politicians who like sponsored it. So I interviewed them on my podcast, and that was like really exciting. I'm really excited to share that with he was the first phone call that I made, and he was just like, I don't think he's ever been prouder. And I literally emailed the politicians and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, you just made my dad so happy. He's nerding out. And Laura, who is the woman who spearheaded the bill, was like, when we get this bill passed, please know that both you and your father are there and invited to sign it in. And he is just like, yes!
That is so amazing.
So excited.
That is incredible.
So him and I have had like a journey together, but we have now gotten to a very good place.
Yeah.
And he is my biggest fan, and he's so proud of all of the content I make because everybody assumes I must have this horrible relationship with him and my mom. And I'm like, no, not even close. I always tell one of the things is I don't think I could do what I do if I did not have the support of my parents.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that I am beyond lucky that both of them are like right behind me, and I am so privileged and lucky that they're both so supportive of what I do. And I genuinely believe that if they didn't support the way they did, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. It would be way too traumatic. And I think that that's an issue for so many donor conceived people, is that they are in horrible traumatic situations and they're not able to speak out. And that's why I take my speaking out so seriously, because it's like I have the privilege and the emotional safety and stability to do it.
That's incredible. And I can only imagine, and we'll get into it, but with the things that you have discovered that were not disclosed to them when they were, I can only imagine that they feel a certain level of, advocacy and responsibility as well, because their situation turned out well, but it could very well, I don't know. We'll get into it.
Yeah, it's complicated. And that's the piece of it. And I think that all recipient parents understandably have a complicated feeling towards it. Mm-hmm. But sort of going back to what we were talking about, yes. So my mom, reconstruction, the little flagella things melted, they separated, they did the full reconstruction. My mom was on hormone therapy for like 3 years. And then her first ovulation after the reconstruction finally took.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's a lot.
That's crazy that they can reconstruct that.
I know. They can. Modern medicine.
Well, and this was 1987.
Yeah, that's
Not so modern medicine.
We've
amazing.
done a lot of
Medieval medicine.
Medieval
the
medicine.
80s medicine. It's all lined with
80s medicine. Okay, so they go through all of this. The first ovulation takes, and
Well, hold on. I would love to just. So we're just talking about how you and your dad got closer when you were 14 because you were taking regular car rides together, which seems to be a great way to bring people together.
Car rides and dads, that's where they talk.
Yes.
Because they're able to control the situation because they can keep it going or stop it as soon as they can, and they don't have to look at you.
Yep.
I think
It is
face to
ultimate
face.
dadding is important conversations in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate dad move.
Yeah, I think it might be a man move now that I'm thinking of it. I have a very distinct image of Steve Carell in that movie Crazy Stupid Love rolling out of the car.
I'm gonna get out of the car. I'm gonna get out of the car.
But that seems so. And at the top of the podcast, you said that you found out when you were 14, but didn't become hyperfixated until later. So it seems like 14 was a big year for you.
I was bonding with my dad, and then he went, "Hey, kiddo, guess what?" And I was like, "Well, this changes everything." It didn't. It was just, it wasn't a change. It was just like, oh, everything makes sense now. Got it. I can see the matrix.
Can you tell us more about that conversation? And did it happen in the car?
It did happen. Yes. We were driving home from horseback riding, and my dad just looks straightforward. And he asked me, he was like, do you know, he was just like, hey, Laura, I have a question for you. Do you know why we adopted your sister? Do you know why? And I was like, and I told him why I think they did. And he was like, okay. I was like, yeah, I can see why you thought that. He's like, it wasn't. He was like, you know that your mom and I struggled with fertility. I'm like, yeah. And he was like, so a piece of that was, because I had only heard about my mom's fertility issues. I've never heard about his at this point. And he was like, well, it's because I can't really, he was like, I'm completely infertile. And he said, and then he said, my favorite question that I will never forget, and I will always make fun of him for the rest of my life for this. He asked me, Laura, do you know how babies are made? And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, Dad, I'm fucking 14. And also, you were there when we had the talk, or were you just dadding out? Like, what was Dad? What? And I remember, like, again, I was my stand-up comic was kicking in, and I just looked, yeah, Dad, I've seen Skinamax. And I remember he just was like, oh, okay, well, he was like, do you know what like sperm donation is? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you're a sperm donor. He's like, we used a sperm donor. And he was like, do you understand? And I'm like,
do you understand?
Yeah. And I think we talked, and I think it was like, okay. Anyway, you want to put Fantastics on? Sure. Okay, cool. And I think it was just like, and I remember just sitting there going like, God, and we got home, and then he must have told my mom, like, all right, I fucking told her. And my mom, she was like, so your dad said that you guys had a big conversation. How are we doing? Like, again, we talked about him dadding out, she full mommed out. And I was just like, yep. And she was like, do you need to talk about it? And I'm like, nope. She did the smart thing. She secretly called my sister, and she was like, you need to call your sister now, because my sister's adopted, like there could be an understanding. And my sister found out that she was adopted way later than she should have. Way late. And so it was a smart move. Like, I think both my parents knew that like, this is way too much for her to talk to us about. Like,
yeah,
we need to bring in the bigger sister. And so they called up my sister. They were like, call her. And so my sister called me, and she was like, so how you feeling? And I'm like, fine. I don't remember. I really don't think it was thing. I was like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's weird. But yeah. And then, but I do appreciate like that my parents were doing that move. Like they were really trying hard, and I appreciated that. But I was really, honestly, I was okay. I was not heartbroken. It wasn't this devastating thing for me. It really, it genuinely was like, I fucking knew it. I knew something was up. Like, I think probably that was,
Validation.
yeah, I for me, it was just this ultimate validation of like, I fucking knew I wasn't crazy. I knew, like, that was really what it was for me. Because I was like, I always thought something was off, and it was just suddenly just like, I know everything. I am omnipotent. Yeah, no. So it was it really wasn't. To me, the effects of being donor conceived have come in waves throughout my life. It has been a long-term thing. And it's why, like, you know, anybody who discovers they're donor conceived, they're like, yeah, it's fine. And I'm like, just wait. Just fucking wait, okay? You're not gonna understand being donor conceived, most likely until you're older. Like, chill the fuck out. Like, and it's like cool that you feel that way right now. Like, I totally get it. I did that too. I was the weird kid, and in college, I used donor conception to like flirt with boys. I don't know why. I'm like, oh my God, speaking of like masturbation. I also learned close-up card magic to get a boyfriend. Like, I did not have a sense of like what was cool. I did juggling.
If you want to donate your sperm to me, like, I'm already a pro.
Like, I really was like, it's interesting because I think if I was a kid now, I think all the shit that I loved, I was like, oh, actually, I would have been like considered like cool and trendy. But like when I was
Yeah.
yeah. So like I just thought this was like this fun, cool thing. But it wasn't until I was 19 I remember it was like my roommate at the time, friend at the time was like, aren't you worried about like genetics? I'm like, what do you fucking mean? She was like, well, like cancer. It's genetic. Like you could have a genetic predisposition to cancer. Aren't you worried about it? And I was like, oh shit.
Your friend sounds really fun. But wait, hold on, I have a question. Before we
Yeah,
remember that, how old was your sister when she found out she was adopted?
Oh God, she was probably 12 or 13. I think
12 or 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was I obviously I cannot, you know, go into her story. That would not be appreciated. But that was a very rough situation. And it was not how that unfolded was just not fair to her. It was just really not fair.
Yeah. Are you surprised? No, I have no preconceived. I don't expect you to answer this question in any type of way. Were you, because that's just a year or two younger than when you found out that you were donor conceived. Were you surprised to hear that your dad played a part in your sister not finding out that she was adopted until she was 12 or 13, and they still waited to pull the trigger to tell you about your donor conception until you were 14?
I think the difference was, and this was something I understood, was they viewed it as very two different things. Mm-hmm. And I can understand that because to them, and part of it was like my mom was my sister's stepmom. So my mom, like that was not her place to have input. But for me, and like, they were always going to tell me. Always, that was the plan. But they were talking to my pediatrician and going like, when is the best time to talk to her? And they decided, let's do middle school, early high school, because we have to be able to explain the physical parts of it, and she has to be old enough to understand it. So, and I know that at 14, that is to today's standards considered a late discovery about learning that you're donor conceived. But I'm 35 years old. The fact that my parents told me it all is a fucking miracle. The fact that they told me at 14 is insanely progressive. The fact that they told my pediatrician is a downright miracle. So my parents were, especially because of my sister's story, knew they were going to tell me. Like that was always going to happen. And they made that decision, I think, largely in part of this was so unfair to my sister. We have to make sure that we deliberately tell her. But they looked at it from a very different perspective, thinking that this is different. But obviously, in today's standards, you always tell the child it is always part of their story. And I do believe that if I was donor conceived today, my parents would absolutely have done that, and they would have done that. That just there was no
Precedent, really.
no guidance. There was nothing for them. They were making it up from the best that they could, and given their time, I mean, they were like insanely progressive with it.
I'm really glad that you just said that. We really took the time at the beginning of this season to evaluate, because as you get further and further into the community, people have different experiences, and there are a lot of people who think that at any point in time, the secret is the worst thing that happened to them, right? So we were like, we can't talk about this without really taking time to reflect if that's something that any of us are angry about, because we didn't feel angry. And then we all sat and reflected, because there were different secrets. Mine was donor conception. Theirs was adoption. They found out when they were 8. I found out when I was 13.
Not adoption.
Or, I'm sorry. They found out. They always knew that they were adopted. Theirs was that I existed. Mine was donor conception.
I can't imagine what the mind fuck that all was.
Yeah, and then we took stock at the beginning of the season to say, well, if we're going to be responsible about this, we need to be able to say, hey, we've acknowledged that in your eyes we were lied to, and we took the time to think about that. And I never thought about the difference in time, like just for their age and the information that they have and the landscape that they saw and any precedent that they had set. Because we just firmly believe that they did the best that they could. And it makes sense that we fall on the same side of the coin of that, in terms of it was around the same time and they were doing the best with the tools that they had.
It does also make sense, because like I think Ricky found out that she was donor conceived at 13. Or that we were. But I think we kind of thought of that as like a really hard time, because it's like formative teen angsty years and stuff. But I guess it does really make sense that a parent would want you to know about all the bells and whistles and stuff.
Yeah,
so
or else
it's
what
like,
the fuck would you even think they were saying?
I guess it makes sense to have it sort of in line with the birds and the bees discussions because of the subject material.
Yeah.
I need to use the restroom real quick. I'm so sorry.
We're going to take a quick break.
But I will say, if there's anybody who is interested, it is now the standard. It is now what is been put out as the healthiest for your donor conceived child, to tell them literally always from birth. There are children's books that are literally help you explain donor conception in a child-friendly way. And I would say it really depends on like your comfortability as a parent, because they can make it super child-friendly. They also have children's books that do use the proper medical terms, but make it in a accessible child way. And there's a huge variety of them. So, and I mean, so, and they're great books. They're all of them. They're so wonderful. And I just so strongly encourage parents, before the child gets here, buy all the fucking books now. Have them there. Always read it to them. It's always part of their story.
Can you shoot those over to us so that we can put them in the bio for this episode episode description?
Absolutely. Oh my God, yeah. Absolutely. There's a huge variety of them.
Perfect. All right. Amazing. So you're 14.
I'm 14.
You go through the rest of your middle school and high school experience having this piece of information that you didn't have before. Did it change your relationship with your dad at all?
No, not at all.
That's great. Would you be able to look back and point out any sort of behaviors or outlooks that changed because of it? Or did you pretty much keep on being the same kid that you would have overall?
No, I really think that I was the same kid. I really do. It really didn't change me. It just was like, it was something that just like every once in a while, you'd be like, looking around, and then I would like sort of find this like, going, oh yeah, that's there. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. I am. Okay. Yeah. And that was the case until college, when like I had that friend who was like, do you ever worry about fucking genetics? And it did get me thinking of going, shit. And I and it was the first time when thinking about it, I allowed myself to be curious about my donor. I allowed myself to be. And I think that that's something that's very common with donor conceived people is we do not allow ourselves to be curious because I think just instinctively we know I have to protect the parents.
Yeah.
I have to. And you just, it's incredible. Like, it really is like, you know, everybody online is like, why aren't you just grateful to be alive? Like, you know, everybody just gives a shit all the time. Like, you aren't grateful. And I'm like, I have never met such a conscious group of people like donor conceived people. They are aware of the entire family's feelings about this immediately. And they are consistently thinking about not just their family, also the donor's family.
Right.
They are so, and fuck their own feelings. They know that it is bottom of the they instinctively know that. And it's like donor conceived people by and large are incredibly conscious of their effect. And it sucks because out of anyone in the situation, they are the only one who didn't decide this. Yet they are taking the most responsibility for emotions and feelings.
And I think that's so poignant and I think that resonates with all of us. And then there's almost like a guilt.
Yeah.
That comes from a few different directions. What was after you found out that you were donor conceived, what was your and your parents' messaging around that as far as like, you know, I think our birth mom was always, yeah, go ahead and you can try and find him, or I will support you in that, or I will even help you with that. Was there any kind of discussion that way, or was it just kind of move?
It was literally move.
Yeah.
It didn't come up until like years later.
Yeah.
It really was for years. It just really sat there.
Yeah.
And it didn't start. I mean, I think I like, you know, later on, I would say it like during college time, I just had questions about like how it happened. And like my mom would share particulars that were like insane to me. But it wasn't until, because once I finally really started allowing myself to be curious and really thinking about like, oh shit, like there is like an impact on my genetics.
Mm-hmm.
I decided, fuck, you know what? I want to try and find my donor. Okay, let's do this. And so at 19, I remember I was at college and I knew my parents' fertility doctor. And I was like, fuck it, let's just call him. I'm going to call him. I'm going to ask him who my donor is. How do I get this information? I'm going to ask about health records and all this stuff. And I was like, okay. And I didn't think that much, like didn't really think hard because I called and I just was like, I'm going to make up his name right now. But I called up the office, nurse picked up and she was just like, hello, Dr. Smith's office. And I'm like, hi, I would like to speak to Dr. Smith. Yes, who's calling? A patient of his. Okay, what's your name? And I was like, shit. And I basically was like, my name is Laura High. Tell him I'm Jane Doe High's daughter. He will know who I am. And the reason I felt confident about that is because my mom told me my parents were his very first patients.
Oh.
Not just his clinic's first patients. Like this was so, and
what a nice success for them.
Right? And so and also with the way that like do you guys know how my conception happened?
No,
Yours personally?
Did like how mine personally happened?
Please tell us all.
It's my favorite story. I will never ever get sick of telling.
Laura, to be honest, now that you're 19 and you're diving deep, the floor is yours. Just take us along the ride and we will just chime in with questions. We have led you to the water.
All right. Well, okay. So picture it. 1987, New York City. Nothing but shoulder pads and hairspray in a dream. And my mom just had full reconstruction surgery. And at this point, they had tried donor conception multiple times. I asked her like how many times. She was like, I don't know, fucking double digits at this point. And like we knew we were like running down. And so she did the reconstruction and ovulating. And she was like, great, can we schedule an appointment for me to come in? And he was like, oh, too bad. You're ovulating on a holiday weekend, which also happened to be the Jewish New Year. And so the clinic was closed. And my mom was like, no. Because you have to understand, my mom was on fertility drugs for 3 years. This is painful. It fucks with you mentally.
Well, and if she's ovulating for the first time, I can only imagine that is a totally new
it's
experience.
I can't imagine like what. So this is something where it's like for my mom, like I understand she was in a different mental space at this point, and I get what was going on, but she basically was like, "Doctor, no, you're gonna fucking figure this out.
Unacceptable.
You are going to make this happen. Make it the fuck happen." And my doctor, instead, like I would love to know why he went with this option over literally any other fucking option he could have thought of. But he basically told my mom, don't worry about it. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to get someone, the donor, to drop off the sperm at a hotel concierge desk. You're going to go pick it up and inseminate it with your husband.
Like turkey baster it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, syringe it inside.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, and this was fresh fucking shit. Like, this isn't frozen. And this is always the thing that gets me. This was fresh. This was fresh. There was, and the clinics were closed. So there was no way they STD tested the dude that day. So my mom was getting raw, unhinged fucking sperm, New York City in the 80s. So I was like, oh my God, Mom, do you understand how fucking dangerous that was? She only realizes it now, and she's just like, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah!
Do we have insight into like how your doctor picked out that particular guy and how that conversation went?
So we don't, I have pieces of information.
Okay.
The hotel that was picked is like 2 blocks away from my donor's office, who is also an OBGYN.
It's like, who's closest?
And my donor was donating already, like he had already donated 6 years prior. And we know that they were like, at least they knew each other. They were friends, colleagues. They like were at the residents at the same hospital. Like they were, their offices were
called in a favor.
Like so this was something where, and my mom was like, I always got the sense he was going to call a friend. Like that was always like, that was what he kind of was like communicating with me. Like I've got it. I've got my sperm man. And so my donor, daddy donor, donated and dropped it off at the hotel. Now we don't know if it was him or if it was an assistant. My mom said that she saw somebody walk in and drop it off. And she was like, I don't know if it was the donor, if it was this, like, I don't know. She was like, I assume it was him. She was like, I have to believe it was him. Because who the fuck is gonna, but we honestly don't know. And I always love to think about like that the concierge.
The concierge.
Fucking clue what's in that bag, man. Don't fucking open that up.
Because I mean, if your mom saw them drop it off, then it's truly like someone's coming in and handing her something. Someone's coming right back in and taking it out of her hands. So she's got to be like,
the concierge must have been like,
what shady shit.
Like, it really does make me feel like it was a drug trade. And then my favorite part is my mom took the sperm and she tries. So, again, she's trying to mom things up. And she tells me, she was like, Laura, I took the sperm. I tucked it into my pants so that I would keep it warm and at the right temperature. And I kept it close to me. And then I whisked off to your father's office and that's where you were made. And I'm just like, hold the phone. Hold on. Wait, hang on. The clinic was closed because it was a holiday weekend. Yet dad was still fucking working. This wasn't a day where dad could have taken a day off. We couldn't have gone home and done this. No. And so my mom, she was just like, yeah, we did it. And because like my dad worked in advertisement. So of course he like had a couch. And she was like, yeah, I just put my legs up on his couch and whoop, and he went back to work. And I just got my legs up. And I was like, thank God he didn't get the intern to do it. Like, Jesus Christ, guys.
Thank God it was a holiday weekend, so she could just lounge up the wall.
And I do love. It's always full circle because I was made on the Jewish New Year, And we found out later in life that I was 50% Ashkenazi Jewish. And my donor is he is an OBGYN Orthodox rabbi loyal.
That's so cool.
Quality sperm.
So
Okay, so wow,
We're all just
that is
taking it in.
magical.
I know, it's a lot. And I mean, you can now. My mom told me that story when we were driving, and I was like, "Are you what?" And she thinks it's like this cute story, and I'm like,
So
"Mom,
romantic.
so but
we did
so
like
your
a black market trade." This
your
is
doctor wouldn't work on, is it Yom Kippur? Is that what we're talking about?
I believe
Is
it's
that the holiday?
oh shit, I don't remember. I feel I haven't. I'm
You're a bad Ashkenazi Jew.
But the rabbi donor was okay with
That's
a
they're
Rosh
the same.
Hashanah.
Oh yeah, right.
Ah. Or some of our audience is going to be like, you idiots. Okay, so we know that about your donate. I mean, I do. I might side with your mom and say it's pretty cute.
I love it. I think it's so cute. Very romantic.
Bizarre. And it is so boomer-esque for them to say a story like that, like super casually.
Yeah.
And you know they've said that to their friends who are also aren't super inquisitive, and everyone's been like, wow. And no one's been like, can we hold the phone for a second?
We did. I was like, you did what? You did fucking what? And so and again, it's like, yo, doc, you did fucking that and not open the clinic back up. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really? That was the better choice.
But then your dad got to be the administrator.
Inseminator.
Yeah.
You know, we could have done that under medical supervision as well.
That's true.
I just would feel a lot better knowing that there was like sanitation around. Like,
Yeah.
Well,
And especially, I mean, the fact that it was no testing done whatsoever.
Yeah, that one was definitely when I realized that I was like, there's no way they STD tested this asshole.
Yeah.
No way. And it was in the 80s in New York City. Like, it was like, yeah, that's kind of dodgy. That's not totally cool. Don't little heart skip a heartbeat moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I told my mom that, like, I was like, do you understand what you did? And she went, so she was like, I essentially had sex with somebody without protection.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, mom, you and yes.
That's
exactly what
New
I did.
York in the
the
80s.
AIDS epidemic
Yeah.
too.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
You
lordy,
did
lordy.
that. And I'm like, there was like, and it's one of those things where it's like, I really don't blame her given like what was mentally going on. But there is like a part of me that's like, can we have a little bit of like a moment though, where we kind of go like, maybe there was a safer option. I don't, but it's again, it's so tough for recipient parents because even though like my mom looks back on it and she was like, yeah, we could have done that a little bit better. She's still like, but then, but it risks me not having you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she was like, she was like, I'm sorry, Laura, but like,
I would choose you.
I choose you every single time. And I'm like, thank you. Yeah, but I don't like, it's hard. It's a hard situation. And I totally appreciate that. And I love that. But it's also like, we rolled the dice on this one.
Hard to stomach. Okay.
I am not educated as I should be on this topic. But from shows and everything, you think of donor conception and you think of like the catalog of sperm donors where you get to like pick like eye color, whatever, that kind of thing. Just like this story. And then I recently, because we interviewed a guy from Our Father, the Netflix documentary. So I was watching the documentary and they're just like casually like, oh yeah, we just had a bunch of like residents and employees that would just like donate like almost it seems like it was part of their job was like, this is part of your contract, like you will donate sperm like and that's just what we're going to give people without telling them who it's from or like any of that stuff and they will know nothing and it's just beyond me.
that was kind of standard practice, like 50s through the 80s, where you would just call up your buddies and be like, who the fuck is free? I'm gonna go over to the med school and just fill her up. It did start to change slightly in the 90s. Like for me, we don't have a donor number. We don't have a donor. We have nothing. That did change a little bit in the 90s. But like my parents didn't pick my donor.
Yeah.
The clinic was supposed to match a donor to my father as best they could. My dad was Irish and Catholic, and they were Irish and Scottish. Sorry, and they were supposed to like find a donor that was like supposed to be that. Now, my favorite piece, the reason I say Catholic is the clinic insisted that the number one thing that they had to match before anything else was religion.
Oh, because that's genetic.
What?
But
yes, I need to make sure that I get that specific Catholicism guilt. Thank you. I really want that fire and brimstone sperm.
Oh my gosh. I think that takes us really, really nicely into, so you're 19 and you're curious for the first time.
So yes. So, okay. Curious, call up. And I'm just, and so I tell them, I'm like, and I literally tell the receptionist, tell them I'm Mrs. High's daughter. I'm Laura High. He'll know who I am. And I don't remember how long it was. It wasn't a lot. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. I think it was really 2 minutes. And immediately Dr. Smith called up and he was like, and I remember him going, hi. And I remember the tone of his voice was like, okay. And I remember saying, hello, Dr. Smith. My name is Laura. I'm Mrs. High's daughter. Do you know who I am? And I will never, this will haunt me for the rest of my life. He said in a tone that I will never forget, he said, yeah, yeah, I know who you are. And it was said in a way where the tension was filling the fucking room. Like I remember like it was suddenly, oh, there's something here.
Mm-hmm.
There's something. And I remember going, shit. I didn't even know what I was stepping into. But I remember it going like, oh, okay. And I asked him, I was like, so I'm calling because, found out a few years ago I'm donor conceived, and I'm interested now to see if I can find out who my donor is, finding out medical history on him, because, I'd love to know, do I have a predisposition to cancers, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, like anything like that. And he said, well, he was like, I can't tell you who your donor is because he is anonymous. But he's like, and unfortunately, even if I could, I couldn't tell you because the bank that we got the sperm from was a mix of doctors and medical students. And that bank burnt to the ground. There's a fire. So all your paperwork is gone anyway. But I can tell you that you have nothing to worry about. Your donor's perfectly healthy. Even at 19, I was like, what? There's a fire? What?
Supposed to take your word for it.
Yeah, and did you automatically assume the fire is dodgy? Because to me, a fire is always dodgy.
He told me, he was like, he's an Ivy League doctor, and you're perfectly healthy. You're fine. That was, and I remember going, okay. I remember the fire was like.
And did you know your hotel story at this point?
Yes, I did. At that point, I did know it, and I'm pretty sure I knew. Actually, I don't remember. I may or may not. Well, maybe not. Maybe that.
Yeah, you would have been like, we wasn't from a bank, bro. The dude ran down the block.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess he's still a part of the bank.
You know what? No, I had to have learned about it in my early 20s because I'm thinking about it from my stand-up perspective and my writing, and realized I didn't add that piece in until my early 20s. So I don't think I knew about that because that wasn't in the original version of my joke. So I don't think I learned about it until I was in my early 20s.
Thank God for stand-up.
It really is a timeline of my life. Like you can go back and realize like, oh, Laura's really happy. Oh, wow, she is depressed right now. Wow. Like it's a great little time capsule.
Yeah.
So, okay, you have that phone call. Yeah. That's not satisfying to you at all.
No, I knew it was bullshit. I didn't know what to do. Like there was nothing for me to do, but I knew it was bullshit. I remember like thinking, do I need to hire a private detective? Like I remember thinking like, this isn't what? And that did sparkle, actually, honestly, I think a little bit more curiosity, because I was like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
And then, like, this doesn't, I knew something was wrong. Now, as you guys heard how my conception went, I did not think it was possible for me to have siblings. And I had no idea of sibling pods or anything like that. I had no idea. So I had no sense that there were siblings or anything. And then we skip a few years later, and then Ancestry, 23andMe's available. And we decide, okay, ready? Let's fucking do it. Let's absolutely do it. And one of the things that was very curious to me was my mom was like very like, no, they matched religion first, and then an ethnicity. And my dad, Irish, Scottish, and Catholic. I have had people assume that I was Jewish my entire life. Specifically, I remember like 13 was definitely, I think, it was younger than 13. It was more like 11 was when like it was more like very much talked about in front of my face, where people were saying things that I was just like, no, I'm not Jewish. And it only picked up as I got older, especially when I moved to New York City. And I used to work in the big Times Square, Toys R Us. We would get a ton of Hasidic families coming in. And God, so many times the Hasidic families would just come up and speak Yiddish to me. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry, I'm not Jewish. And every single time they'd be like, what? Okay. Are you kidnapped? Like what? They were always like the nicest moms. Oh my God. I adored every time I would chat it up with them, and they were just so sweet. And we would just talk about toys and kids and raising, and because I was also a nanny as well. So, we would just talk about, and they were just always so lovely. But they would always be like, what are you? Like, what? And I was like, well, I'm Polish. And that was how I thought my features were mainly coming from, was Polish. And they were like, okay. But it happened so fucking much. The amount of people from the Jewish community who would be like, but. And it was a consistent theme in my life for years. Mm-hmm. Where since I first memory of it was I was 11. It was all the time. It was continuous. And it was so many times from members, as I said, of the Jewish community who would always assume I'm Jewish. Everybody from, random school friends to rabbis would assume I was. Casting. All the casting directors would send me out. I know this is going to sound horrible. This is going to sound awful. But this is real. So I'm an actor. And the thing that I am, because like you're called in for specific types, the most specific type I was called in for the most was Holocaust survivor. The amount of times I've been fucking called in to play a Holocaust survivor was like, geez, like how many Holocaust projects are you all doing? Like, and it was
at least they know that you are strong and resilient.
It was just and it just intensified in my 20s, where this was a constant conversation for me. I mean, it was literally.
And were you still having no doubts at that point?
At that point, I was like, okay. And I mean, I have a mirror. I saw my face, and I was just like, Laura, you do show your resemblance to a lot of your classmates who've invited you to their bar and bar mitzvah. And like, because like most of my friends, like again, I grew up in Westchester County. I went to more bar and bar mitzvahs than I did sweet 16s. Mm-hmm. I have been to more Jewish weddings than any kind of other wedding, and I would always be asked, "Are you family?" Always. always asked. I have, I've been to so many, so many temples. Always assumed, and it was, and people would be like, "Are you sure you're not Jewish? Because you literally look like my cousin. Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes."
No, what a question.
But then it got to a point of like, what we really started thinking was, and then we just were like, the doctor must have lied. He must have, this must have happened. Like we actually, what we were a little worried about was, because my doctor was Jewish, and we were concerned that, did he switch it out for his own?
Right.
And that was because we did know that was a thing. And that was our concern of like, oh shit, did Dr. Smith do it? That was our concern. And that was kind of what we were a little worried about. And so when we took the test, that was sort of in the back of our heads of like, oh shit, are we going to find out that I'm a product of fertility fraud? I am not. So we took the test, and I was 26, and we got the test back, and it was 50% Ashkenazi Jewish. I did not expect 50%. And my mom took the test as well, does not have a lick of Ashkenazi in her. Not a lick. And we did both Ancestry, 23andMe, exact same results. And seeing that it was 50% really hit me hard. It was like, whoa. And it was the sweetest thing, because like one of my best friends is very devoutly Jewish, immediately called him to tell him. And he first thing he did was invite me to my first Seder. And I had my first glass of Manischewitz with his family. It was so wonderful. They gave lovely matzo ball soup. It was very sweet.
Were you at that point, especially because it was such a part of your growing up? I personally, if I found out that I were Jewish, would be stoked. Were you super excited about it after you got over the shock?
I was genuinely incredibly, I was beyond happy. One, there are many reasons. One, it finally was like, I could finally genetic mirror. I could finally, even though I wasn't genetic mirroring with my biological family, I could genetic mirror with like my genetic community and finally see myself, because there are so many of my features that are not resembled in my families. And suddenly I could see myself for the first time.
For those who haven't heard the term, can you break down, is that what genetic mirroring means?
Yeah, genetic mirroring is like being able to genetically see yourself and connect yourself in biological family. And it can be incredibly impactful to see yourself. Because it is sort of this cue of like family, and this is okay. And it can be it's a very powerful tool. It can be extremely powerful. And it's a big thing with a lot of donor conceived people, a lot of adoptees, when it's like the first time you're able to genetically mirror. It also like kind of is that sort of like incredible phenomenon that if you connect to a sibling or a family member later in life, it can be so powerful. It turns romantic in many ways, because it's just such a powerful feeling that you just have no idea what it is, and it ends up getting a little banjo-y. It's quite, yeah.
Did you say banjo-y?
A little banjo-y, yeah.
And that, so obviously really powerful for it to happen for the first time. And I don't know how much you can speak to this, but has an impact that you don't know about, that you don't realize that you were missing that.
It was the first time, honestly, when I found out that I was Ashkenazi Jewish, it was the first time I was able to, it was my first steps onto actually falling in love with the way I look. I was able to, because I was so, I really, like, I have massive body dysmorphia. I've had eating disorders my entire life. I've had anorexia. I've had bulimia, binge eating disorder. Like, she, my girl, like we've always been, close knit. Massive body dysmorphia. And it really made a huge difference into being able to look in the mirror and knowing where these features were all coming from. And
Yeah.
it really impacted my self-esteem in just such a wonderful way. And again, like my closest friends are part of the Jewish community. I've like always, the Jewish community was always my next door neighbors. So for me, like knowing that I had a connection to this community who always was such a pillar in my life meant the world to me. And even though, like, you know, I was not raised in that culture, I don't practice Judaism. The fact that I'm still, even like though I'm like a guest in that house, I'm still in that house, and that it means more to me than anything. And it was just something that I was so happy that was finding out that was home.
That's so beautiful, and obviously what I was hoping you would say. And it's I think it's so fortunate for you to have grown up with such a close connection to that community already. I know we talk to a lot of people where they don't know the first way to get into the house. You know what I mean? So to be growing up in that environment and have it a door down,
Literally,
it's great.
Yeah, and I mean, like, and I'm very fortunate that one of my, literally, like, my best friend is Jewish. So like anytime I call him up and I'm like, yo, what's that? Like, and we talk about Jewish culture. We talk about, you know, all things part of the Jewish community, and his family is so involved in their temple. So it's just like, it's so amazing that I literally have that incredible, you know, love you, Jules. And that I have him and his family that I can always like kind of reach out to and talk to. It's really just, I'm very, very fortunate that I have that, because there are so many donor conceived people who do find out that they are a completely different ethnicity than what they thought, and they've got nowhere in their life, they have no connections to connect with it. And for me, it was literally always there.
Yeah, we interviewed a guy who his mom was actively racist, against very strong racism against Black people. Only to find out that he was half Black. And that's, I mean, it's just a whole, and I'm sure that a lot of this goes into the way that you feel about donor conception and all that. And I will dive into it, but I'm sure that's it's a big deal, and I think has a huge impact. So you take the test, so it sounds like your parents are finding out for the first time.
They are, yeah.
And I know you said you weren't a product of fertility fraud, but is it not for fertility fraud to be lied to about the identity? Well, I guess,
religion, I guess.
Fertility fraud is very specifically a doctor switching out the donor sperm, eggs for their own or any other that they feel like.
Okay.
Lying about a profile or details about the profile or details about the donor is not. That can be more like of a misrepresentation.
Okay.
But like literally the amount of donor conceived people who have the wrong ethnicity, ancestry is like, that's so bread and butter for us. Like that's basic. There's a pod of 100 siblings that I know who all on their donor profile says Italian. Their donors like Ukrainian, Russian. Very different. There's another pod of 100. Again, said Italian. Nope. Irish.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you find out about this, and how do your parents feel? And then what's the path forward after?
And did you have siblings on that test already?
I did not have siblings yet. They came in later. My parents they didn't give a shit. They were like, okay. They like, for them, they didn't give a shit. They were like, okay. Like, it's one of those things where I do think for them, I think now they're looking back going like, oh, there was a pretty big lie there. Maybe we should have what could have that also meant? But like for my parents, like if my doctor had been honest with them and said like, look, we have no Irish, Scottish donors, but I have a donor who's Ashkenazi Jewish. Would you like that? My parents would have been like, fuck yeah, load her up. Hell yeah. Like they wouldn't have given a shit. Would not have cared. And I think the only difference is, knowing my parents, they probably would have made the Jewish culture even more accessible to me than it already was. Like, and it was already extremely accessible at my throughout my entire life. I think they just probably would have made it more.
Yeah.
They probably would have made it more of a like, let's go to temple together. Let's go connect with the Jewish Community Center. And let's see if, this is something that Laura, wants to like kind of dabble in as well. And that was, but they didn't give a shit. They're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. And what a testament to them to feel like that's how they would have approached that.
Yeah.
So tell us about your.
So then so I took the test when I was 26. And then when I was 29, we got a hit. And it was the aunt of my donor. Not the aunt, it was the cousin of my donor, sorry. It was his cousin. And it was really sweet. My mom and her and I all went out to dinner together. And she was really cool. And she was like, okay. And it was like, we kind of sat down. She was like, well, you have 3 options. It could be the guy who was my donor, his brother, or his father. And we were like, oh shit. And we kind of like sort of did the math on the timing. And then we realized, no, it's definitely my donor. And we were like, okay, well, tell it like, and she, looking back, she was being really political about it. And she just was like, yeah, I haven't really spoken to him in decades. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh. And she just was like, yeah, he's just not the nicest. And I was like, okay. She was trying very hard. Very hard. And that's how I learned, like, he's an OBGYN, rabbi, moil. That's how I learned he has 2 kids. And that was like, oh my God, I have a brother and a sister out there. Holy shit. So that was that. And I was able to look him up and look at his face for the first time. And I was like, shit, that's my biological father. First time I've ever looked at my biological. And it's such a weird feeling looking at a biological parent for the first time. It's so interesting. But I did very quickly figure out what she was talking about because I went onto his Facebook, which he's now blocked me on, by the way. And the dude is racist as fuck. And he's not nice. Like, looking at his posts, I was like, whoa, okay.
Does that, first and foremost, you said you're a carbon copy of your mom.
Yeah.
So did you see any outstanding resemblance to him?
No, not really. I mean, it really was like, he looked more like me than my dad, but not really. When I saw a picture of his daughter, I was like, oh, that I can see. His daughter, I was like, oh no, we definitely, we look like we can be related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met our biological father for the first time in April and have never met, aside from my uncle, a man that we were biologically related to.
Wow.
And it was very strange. It was very strange.
Yeah.
We always say this and then we don't ever say what we're saying because we forget about the YouTube people. From here, I'm pointing to like right above my lip up to my forehead, and Jules as well, is just identical.
Spitting image.
And it freaked, not you so much, it freaked me out for a while. Like, I started looking at myself in the mirror and being like, do I have a masculine face? Because I think I just look exactly like this person. Is my femininity gone? And then it would just be like my face was sort of melting, and it was like I took acid without taking acid, basically.
Yeah.
But I have gotten over that. Okay, so no outstanding resemblance to him, and then obviously seeing the things that he posted on his Facebook. There's many different sides of this situation, but a lot of people do. What does it mean to you that he's not a nice person insofar as how you think about yourself?
It was sad. It was just like, oh, damn, dude, really? Well, and it's always like, I think it is a little bit of a I think it's a very normal thing that's sort of shattered for donor conceived people because it's been built up for us that like, oh my God, it's this generous person, it's this hero, they did it, and then you find out like this fucking asshole, actually. This was an asshole who doesn't give a shit about, he just wanted a pay, like he doesn't care at all. Like at all. And that's just something empathetically I don't understand. Like I can understand why he's like, yo, I have no interest in like I you know, I can understand why it would be like, hey, yeah, we can like write to each other a little bit. Like I can understand like that being like, this is what I'm comfortable with. But I cannot for the life of me understand ever knowing you have biological children out there who are as much biologically yours as the children you had naturally with. And you're not fucking curious at all that like we're okay. And there was a little bit for me that I was a little upset with that. It was like, dude, you're a dad. You're a doctor. You're a rabbi. Like there's a sense of community, duty, fatherly, paternal that like I would expect from you.
Mm-hmm.
And to find out that it was like, you got none of that, nothing. And I mean that to the full degree because like I wrote him a letter. I literally dropped it off at his office with his secretary. And I have since also written him an email just asking for medical history. That's literally it. Like very specifically, the letter was well, I'm jumping ahead. But essentially the moral of the story is like he has been asked for medical history, literally like, please sign anything you want. We legally can't get anything from him anyway. Like that's just legally not in our power. But we will still sign something if that just makes you feel better. Just want medical history. That's it. And the fact that like he's a doctor and is still not willing to do that is like, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Like,
seriously.
really weird.
It's
That's
like,
bizarre.
it feels like it goes against first do no harm a little bit.
He really does. Like as a doctor, you understand the importance of medical history. Like that is something you get. And he's an OBGYN. Like this affects you, dude.
Yeah. And
he's a dad. He has 2 kids.
Right.
And it just was very like, fuck you, man. Like, really?
Yeah.
And everybody always is like, well, he doesn't owe you anything. Like, you owe him gratitude. I'm like, I don't owe him shit. I don't know this dude absolute fucking shit. In fact, he should be thanking me because I bought him his pack of beer. Yeah. I'm the reason he got a new TV set.
Right.
What? Like, I owe him nothing. He looked at me as a transaction and a transaction only. I don't owe him shit.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like that is just not in my no. And I have actively been as respectful as I can. And I as much as I can. And like, you know, after I sent the second the second email to him, he's now officially blocked me on Facebook and everything. Like I went and checked. Like he has blocked me everywhere. And it's like, fuck off, dude. Like, dude, one, if I really wanted to, like, you think that's going to stop me? Like, really?
Fair point.
No.
What are you even trying to do? Like, that's so baby. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's like meant to hurt you more than it is to protect himself.
Dude, you have photos up on Google. Like, blow me. Like, what are you have like a website? Like, I can find you very easily. I know where your office is. But
yeah,
fine.
The fact that you dropped that off at his office and he's not like, this is a serious.
Yeah.
For sure.
It really was. It was just, I was so anxious about putting it through the mail that it wouldn't get there. I just needed to know it did arrive.
Yeah.
That was literally it. It wasn't supposed to be like a sending a message or anything. It was just literally like, I just need to know that it's in his box. I need to watch it go in.
Right.
Yeah, it really was this just like, dude, like, but fine, block me on Facebook if that makes you feel better. Like, go right ahead. I would feel like at this point, like given my platform, is like, dude, I've not named you. I have no plans of naming you. I've publicly said I'm never going to name you. So like, come on, man. Like I'm actually like helping, like I'm doing you the favors, which I owe nothing for. But you know, whatever.
Is it? Is it illegal or just against your morals to say, if you don't give me my medical history, I will let everyone know who you are?
Legally, I'm not sure, to be honest. Like, it could be taken as blackmail.
Yeah.
So I don't know the laws around that. I mean, it wouldn't be defamation because it's true. We
Right.
can prove it. We can absolutely prove it. And yeah, that would be the only thing is I don't know in terms of like laws with blackmail or anything. I just don't know. And I've but let me put a pin on this because I have to get to the next part and then it will make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. Do you have quite a bit more to go?
I just the siblings and then
Okay.
So then I was 29 and 30. I got an email from a woman, and she's like, "I know this is going to sound really weird, but I think we're sisters." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "I have a sister." She was like, "You actually have 3. Me and my full sister are both donor conceived from the same donor, and I've already found another sister in Seattle." And I'm like, "Holy shit. Oh my God." And
it's her saying me and my full sister are conceived from the same donor.
Yeah.
I thought it was you saying that for a second, and I was like,
no,
how does that work? Okay.
And then last year I found a brother.
Okay.
How was that?
It was so when we talk about genetic mirroring, me and the brother, we look exactly alike. Like that is like very clearly, this is my brother. Very clearly. And he has photos of like his 2 kids look like our other sisters. Wow. Exactly.
So you have how many in total? 4?
4 so far. But when I talked to like when I first sort of entered the atmosphere, we found out like, cause we could sort of do a gauge of like, okay, so far here's our eldest sister. She was born in 1983. She had to be conceived in 1982. I was conceived in 1987, born 1988. We did a background check on him, found out he started med school in 1982. So we're like, okay, probably he started in 1982 then. But that means he was donating actively for at least 6 years. And because he was a med student and then an OBGYN, he had phenomenal access. So I've been warned that I need to prepare myself for having over 50 siblings.
Jesus.
Were they the bank that their parents got their donation from? Was it in New York?
It was New York, but a different doctor.
Oh boy. Okay.
I don't think that they got it from a bank. I think that was bullshit. It was deposit at that time. I don't think that it was from a bank. I really think it was just direct deposit, and he just called everyone up and he was like, "No, you milk me whenever you want."
Yeah. Lawless, truly.
Very lawless, yeah. And again, it's hard to say. I mean, I would love, yeah. So it's just, we're piecing this together as we gain more and more information.
Okay. So, and then it's 4 with that, but not counting his children.
No, 4 donor conceived, 2, myself, bro, sister. Oh no, sorry, 5 of us. 5 donor conceived siblings, and then he has 2 natural. So at the moment, we 7 of us total. Okay. But given the fact that he donated actively for 6 years, they're like, no, you need to be prepared for way more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you, this is the side that I really want to get into for the last however many minutes or so, but have you taken the time to meet your siblings?
So the sister who initially contacted me, we talk fairly regularly. We have not been able to meet yet. She has unfortunately had some pretty severe medical issues, which is why I sent him the second email of going like, dude, and she also sent him an email of going like, dude, we need medical shit. Like she's had some very serious problems. She has autoimmune disorders, and she's been hospitalized. Like it's very serious. And that would be, I would only go to like demon level of chaos of like, I'm going to fucking name you, is if she's in the hospital and the doctors are like, we can't figure out what the fuck is going on. We need family medical history. Then I would absolutely pull the emergency hatch, but only in that case. would I ever go like, asshole, do it now, or I will absolutely make a video naming the fuck out of you. Save this person's life. But hopefully we never come to that. Hopefully we never will. I really hope we never do. But she's really desperate. And that just really sucks.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And that is unfathomable to me that he could hear that one time and not want to give it over. That is so bizarre. I don't.
Yeah, it's evil. It's evil. In his profession, it's evil.
And literally, I in my email was like, dude, we know you donated for 6 years. You know that we there's more siblings out there. You know this. They're going to want medical history. If you give it to us, we can give it to them. And
we can just leave you the fuck alone.
Although it's like, dude, there's hypothetically 50 of us out there. We're all like staying pretty calm with this. I have no idea if we're gonna get one sibling who's like, fuck it, and just
it's as big of an asshole as you are.
Yeah, it's like, dude. I mean, some of my siblings have been like, should we contact his kids? And I'm like, I really don't feel comfortable with that at all. But like, I can't stop anybody. Although I have made my feelings very clear on it, saying like, I really don't think that that's right to do that. They didn't do anything. Yeah. They have nothing to do with this, and I would feel really guilty just coming in and just dropping this bomb on them. But like, I don't know what's right. It's such a hard place to negotiate and figure out what is right.
You're so much nicer than me. I would be like, one of you, go do it. So it's off my chest, but like.
But I mean, like at some point, it's very easy that it's like we'll find another sibling and who's just gonna be just out for blood, and I could understand why. There's so many reasons. And
have you all kind of agreed that as you stumble across more siblings, you will divulge to them who they're?
Oh yeah. I mean, they have the right to know. I will happily give them all the information and be like, here it is. Here's everything you need to know. But yeah, it really is like, it's like, dude, you're really playing with a roulette wheel with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the best thing you could do. And I even in the email told them, like, I will sign any piece of paper guaranteeing I will never name you. None of us will ask for money. Like, we will do that. All we want is medical history. Like, literally, that is it. And we will leave you the fuck alone.
What is your theory behind why he's not doing this? Is it truly like just a power trip to know something that other people don't know? What is it?
I have no idea. I have no clue. I mean, to me, that says his family has no idea. I don't know if he's worried that this could maybe hurt a reputation of some sort. It could be he genuinely is worried about money. There's so many things that like I know he just is like, this is just not what he signed up for. But the best thing I'm gonna assume, which is so common, is his family doesn't know, and he's like, they cannot ever know.
And him like handing over these records is in essence admitting that I am acknowledging that I am your father.
Oh, he hasn't acknowledged it, I suppose. Okay, well that makes more sense.
Were you able to at least piece together like some like a partial medical history from the cousin?
No, because she was like, I don't know anything about their side. She was like, she was like, the only thing I remember as a child, he had like really bad eczema, which I totally have as well. Not horrible, but I have like a little bit of it. But she was like, no, I don't really know anything about his side, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Ugh,
so
that's so frustrating.
Yeah. So this was, I assume, what kind of did these events play out? Like, this is what lit the fire under your ass because it's very unjust.
It's what did it? Finding out, because as I said earlier, the only thing that I wanted was siblings as a child. That was it. And now I found I have siblings, and they were taken from me my entire fucking life. And I remember my sister said it the best. She was like, because it was instant, the bond that her and I had. It was instant. And she was like, we could have had each other our entire lives. Our entire life. That was stolen from us. And that made me so angry that was that opportunity was taken. And I started talking to some experts about like, how is this even fucking possible? And that's when I started to learn, like, wait a minute, there's no sibling cap? What? Wait, what? There's no sibling cap? What? And that's when, like, and I just was so like, how is this fucking possible? So I started making videos about basically me learning, and sharing it and being like, I'm going to find my siblings. And that's how I would say my online presence about this really started. It was all about a journey about me finding my siblings and learning about donor conception on the way, but it was really focused on finding my siblings. But in that journey, learning how fucked up this industry is and connecting to other donor conceived people and hearing their stories was like, oh shit balls. This is a flaming pile of red flags and just bullshit. Oh my God. And it hyperfixated. And that was it. 30 years old, it was suddenly like, I can't look away. I have to understand what this is. I have to understand this now. How is this possible? How is this still possible? How did we get here? What has, and then now we're here.
The floodgates opened.
If you could walk us through like your top 10 not so fun facts.
I have a question first before we get into this part of it. So back to this phone call that you had with the doctor and this very distinct tone of voice that you heard when he answered the phone, knowing what you know now, what do you think that was about?
Oh, I think he was covering his own tracks completely, of knowing like, oh shit. I'm sure like he promised his bud, he was like, oh. And I'm sure he was protecting his friend. I'm sure of it. I'm sure it was, I'm sure there's more fucking seedy shit he did.
Mm-hmm. You mean the guy that had the sperm sample dropped off at the hotel?
And I'm sure for him, it was just like, I don't want my shit to get in the news. I don't want this. I'm going to put this out as quickly as I can. Good fucking bye.
Yeah.
And I think he knows what he did was, I'm sure he knows whether just me or other people, he has done unethical bullshit.
Right.
And he was trying to cover tracks real fast and just end it as quickly as possible.
I think it's a great tip for the listeners. If anyone ever tells you that something has been destroyed due to a fire, there's a 75% chance you're missing a part of the puzzle.
Yeah, it really is like, come up with a better lie. It is the ultimate dog ate my homework. Like, we know what it is.
It exactly is the adult version of the dog ate my homework. Okay, so in your well, first about your other siblings. So you haven't had the chance to meet your sister that you really instantaneously bonded with. Have you met the others? And is everyone interested in that, or is it just some of you?
They have no interest right now.
Okay.
Not emotionally, not in that space to do it.
Okay.
So far, I am the only one of my siblings who was purposely told by their parents. The rest of them all found out accidentally.
Holy shit.
All over the age of 30.
Is that hard for you? Because like you just wanted siblings and like they don't really.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's hard. My brother is like, we live close.
Mm-hmm.
I could go meet him very easily. That's hard, knowing that I can't do that and knowing that that's just not what he wants right now. Even just to have a cup of coffee once is hard, but I also respect that that's what they need. I don't know what their life has been like. I don't know what they've gone through. And even though I don't know them personally, they're still my siblings, and I just want them to be okay. And if that means we're not going to have communication for a year, 5 years, 10 years, forever, then I'm going to respect that. I really hope that they change their mind. But it is what it is.
I'm glad you have the one sister though.
But I got the one, and she's fabulous, and she's my amazing big older sister, and she is very proud of what I am doing, and I just it was instant bonding with her, and I love her, and I'm so unbelievably grateful that I got one, and that's just fantastic.
Do you have any plans put in place to meet her anytime soon?
We're hoping next year is going to be it. She's been having just some very severe health issues.
Yeah.
So we've had to give some space for that, but hopefully next year I can go out to her.
Talk about insult to injury, to just know that the reason that you're not meeting her is also like this black box that you can't penetrate is infuriating.
Yeah, I mean, it sucked because, like, I invited her to like my wedding, and she was just like, health wise, I can't make it. But it was, I just wanted her to know that she's wanted, and would love for her to be there.
I think it's super unfortunate that you haven't been able to meet each other for the reason that you haven't been able to meet each other. And obviously it's unfortunate that your other siblings feel the way that they do right now.
Yeah.
We have plenty of time, insofar as everyone has as much time as they have, I suppose. Plenty of time that you know about. But all I wanted in my youth was to meet them, because I knew that they were out there and they didn't know that I was out there. So I so feel for you in that respect. And I just can't imagine. I'm imagining it weighs on you every single day, but I am really excited for you to have the opportunity. And I can't wait to hear how it actually goes, because it is a life-changing experience.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I am counting the days down, hopefully next year, hopefully sooner. But yeah, I'm sort of like trying really hard not to imagine what it's going to be like, because I have a sense that it's going to be something that I can't even begin to imagine. But thank you. I'm very hopefully soon, girl.
Yeah. Hopefully soon. I have high hopes for it. It's good. Obviously, we've all heard a million times, it's good to go in with no expectations. I think the experience of meeting a sister is a lot different from meeting like a parent in these circles. So I have high hopes for you.
So do I.
And just to round us out, we know that you've learned so much about the industry, like an inordinate amount. And we want to end with like all of the things that you've been up to and the things that you want people to know. And we'd love to do another episode with you where we kind of do a deep dive into that, because it's hefty in and of itself, obviously. But if you could give us like top 5 or top 10 red flags that you've discovered, or not so fun facts.
So the fertility industry, most unregulated branch of medicine, and this is a multi-million-dollar industry. And it is, however bad you think it is, it always gets worse. It always gets worse. It is filled with sexual assault, racism, eugenics, just the exploitation, commodifying of children, leaving children to fucking die. It's horrible. And there's no reason for it. It's literally just a bunch of greedy CEOs who don't give a shit. And a bunch of people with God complexes. There are good people in this industry who just, unfortunately, don't even know how their own industry really works, and don't understand how bad it gets, because for them, they're like, well, I operate ethically. And I'm like, okay, but you understand there's some yahoos in there who are literally essentially treating children like science experiments. And it's horrible. So definitely for me, number one is fertility fraud, is getting fertility fraud passed. As we mentioned before, fertility fraud is when a doctor switches out the chosen donor DNA for their own or any other that they feel like. It's not the chosen donor. Or it's not the partner's DNA when they come in for IVF. And so right now we are working very hard to get fertility fraud passed nationally. Right now it's only passed in 11 states. And because essentially if you are a victim of fertility fraud or you're a product of fertility fraud in a state where it is not passed, it is exceptionally beyond hard to get any form of justice. It's not that it's impossible, but you might be out of fucking luck depending on what state you're in. It is ridiculously hard.
How common is this? Because I think when people hear this, obviously we have the Our Father, which was a bomb drop, but how common is fertility fraud?
It's way more common than we'd like to think about because 17% of the United States population has taken a commercial DNA test like 23andMe and Ancestry. And that's how we have found for doctors who committed fertility fraud. We've already found 70 doctors.
Oh my God.
We found 70 doctors already who have done this. It's a lot.
And DNA testing has been out since what, 2000? Not that long.
I don't know, but not long. And especially the ability to like connect with DNA relatives. I'm not sure, but not long. And we've already found 70 doctors. And so basically all of these doctors, these lab techs, these nurses have literally just watched doctors get the fuck away with it. They've literally just watched the community band together behind the doctor. There's nothing stopping a there's no incentive for a doctor to stop. Because the thing about fertility fraud, because people are always wondering like, how the hell do these doctors get away with it? And it's like, fertility fraud is different than any other kind of medical fraud. Because like, let's hypothetically say, you had a surgery and they left a sponge in you. You're going to find that out pretty quickly. You're going to find that out really fast. Fertility fraud, you're not going to find it out until 20, 30, 40 years later. It makes it very hard. And it's like kind of like the rules of fraud are like, how the fuck do we process this?
Right.
What do we do? And one of actually the biggest problems is most prosecutors don't want to prosecute it. They just really don't want to do it. Because prosecutors are voted in by their community, and their community typically always really protects these doctors, and they know they'll lose their job. So most prosecutors just absolutely just don't do it. That's why it's important for us for the fertility fraud legislation federally to criminalize it. So it's so it's a different prosecutor, and it's the people who are appointed, not voted in. That alone will make a huge difference. The other piece about getting fertility fraud passed, and this kind of relates back to the years, is in most states where it's again, the time difference just makes it really, really hard. So in some states, even where fertility fraud is passed, you have a year upon discovery to bring charges up. But as we all know, you might not find your siblings for 5 years. It's really hard to do that. And to really make a solid fertility fraud case, you have to sort of show how many times he did this. And so the fertility fraud federal legislation would make it a 10-year nationally that you would have. And it's just like, again, it's like, and then the states that don't have it passed, like, even if you have like a really good lawyer, depending on what state you're in, you're fucked. Because in some states, it might only be, and like, again, fertility fraud isn't, and I'm saying like fertility fraud isn't passed. So you're looking for a lawyer who can maybe make something crafty and figure something out. Can we go into the consumer laws? Can we do medical fraud? Can we do rape? Can we do sexual assault? It would be sexual assault by deception. And there are many states where like that's not considered a crime. So that's out of the way. There's other states where they won't go forward with it because the victim most likely would be like the mom who would have the procedure done to her. And only the mom is allowed to go after the doctor, not the father, not the other partner, not the donor conceived person. It's such a mess. It's so hard to move forward on it. it's so hard to do, and it's why it's so unsuccessful, like most of the time. And so that's why we need to make it federally illegal and criminalize it, so that we have kind of like a package way of actually and bringing fertility fraud up to, in some ways, like the same sort of platform and pillar that other forms of fraud are on. Because it should be.
Yeah.
So that would be a big one. Because there's just, this is fertility fraud. Usually, like, the doctor gets paid because it's just the family has like no options. It's extremely hard. The other one would be sibling caps. The fact that, so federally, there's no sibling cap in the United States. Colorado last year, specifically by the Donor Conceived Council, got a sibling cap put in. And they also made Colorado the first open ID state mandatory at 18. So all donors, so it's basically all donors will be known to the donor conceived people. Once that donor conceived person hits the age of 18, they will get the identity of their donor. And the sibling cap in Colorado is 25 families. That's still a fuckload. That's still a lot, but it's at least something. And that means like a donor is only allowed to donate to 25 families.
Okay.
But each of those families could have 2 kids, and that's a 50 sibling pod. Like, that is still stupid. That's way too much. Accidental incest is a very, very real problem. Siblings, like, we know plenty of siblings who went to school with each other, were each other's childhood best friends, had the same, dated the same person. A sibling 1 had a crush on sibling 2. It's a very real problem. And it's also just, it's so inhumane, the fact that it's like you're allowed to pump out 100 siblings and treat them like fucking Skittles. Like, that's just, we're not Pokemon cards, guys. We are sentient human beings. So that would be another thing, is a sibling cap. It also, anonymity getting banned. Anonymity is just inherently unethical. There are so many countries that have banned anonymity, such as the UK, Germany, Sweden, Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, and Norway. All have banned anonymity. Even the UN is like, everyone has the right to know who their biological parents are. So even the UN backs this up. And anonymity is just inherently dangerous and unethical. One, just emotionally. As I said, everyone has the right to know who their biological parents are. That's just a ridiculous thing to deny. And it's ridiculous that we have a system in place that systematically separates that. Like, that's really fucked up. And on top of which, the anonymity allows the industry to get away with horribly unethical activity, such as fertility fraud, such as the sibling caps, falsified documents, falsified medical history. The amount of donor conceived people who get false medical histories and literally can like cost them their lives, or give them or put them in this diagnostic hell loop for their lives. There's a donor conceived person I know who she's like, and her pod is very sick. Like, physically, they all have massive ailments. And I believe what she told me was by the time she was 15 years old, she had 13 surgeries. It's horrible. Another one of her siblings has a cyst growing on her spine that's going to make it impossible for her to walk like past the age of 50. And her other sibling has cysts growing all the time on their thyroid. It's just constant medical problems. And so then that would lead me, so the idea of anonymity being banned and being able to have that consistent relationship and communication with the donor to be able to have constant medical updates is huge. Like, that is life-saving shit. And that's been a big issue that donors have also seen as well, because they've tried contacting the clinics and the cryobanks and been like, I've been diagnosed, or my sister has been diagnosed with a fatal genetic illness, literal fatal. I need you to tell these families. And the clinics and cryobanks will not pass it on.
I didn't even think about the
ones that don't show themselves.
Of course,
until later.
They don't get. They're donating sperm when they're in their 20s. They're
19. They're babies. They don't.
Yeah. So much of their medical history hasn't even popped up yet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm so on board with what you're saying about the anonymity because I hadn't really thought it, because I got so much heat on TikTok when I revealed that our donor had requested to be anonymous and I had found him, which was just crazy in and of itself.
Mhm.
But if we were to ban the anonymity, then they would know that going in, and
Right.
people who didn't want to be discovered just wouldn't opt in to do that.
Well, and here's the thing. It's impossible for donors to be anonymous anyway nowadays. Like, it's
Yeah.
not something you can promise. But also, if anybody ever gives you shit again about that, all you say is, I didn't agree to the anonymity. Show me where I signed the contract of anonymity. Yes, my parents had to agree to it and stick to it because they signed it. I didn't. Show me where I signed it.
Yeah.
Show me. I will not be beholden to a contract in which I did not agree to.
Yeah, I didn't countersign.
Fuck off. Sorry.
He didn't countersign. I mean, he could have cared less, thank God. Which was another, people get on their high horse and you're like, are you not listening to me say that he's fine? But
yeah,
anyway.
I always tell people to go fuck off with that. It's like, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, you guys are obsessed with the movie Mamma Mia. You love movies of biological families finding each other. Like, fuck off. Like Mamma Mia, August Rush, What a Girl Wants, all of them. You're constantly rooting for family to
The
find
Parent
each other.
Trap.
Except donor conception, because ooh. It really is this cognitive dissonance with it that I'm always like, get over yourself. Like you are not actually thinking about it. You are only perpetuating what this narrative that the fertility industry wants you to do, and it's fucking stupid. There's literal no ethical reason to uphold anonymity. It's dumb, it's not right, and it kills kids. You can go suck it.
And it's so interesting how one of the first points that you brought up is that donor-conceived children, offspring, are so cognizant of other people and how they're feeling in their own family. And now we're having to deal with the burden that what is projected onto us by people who don't know us at all, and they're protecting, they're jumping up to defend a donor, and we're having to bear the brunt of that. It's such an interesting point that I hadn't thought about. Like, why
a donor
do
who
you guys
has chosen to remain anonymous? Like, we're like,
the donor who, and I'm like, I'm sorry, who are you trying to protect? This fucking narcissist who literally was like, yeah, I don't give, like, sure, here's my sperm, go make 100 kids. Can I pay for Miami now? Who are you? But people are like, well, he still gave you life. Fuck off. And I'm like, that's your floor. That's your bar. Go fuck off. Like, raise your standards, assholes. Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
I don't owe this man anything.
I'm of the mind that parents or children don't owe parents anything, period. But that's just me.
Yeah, and it really is this, like, he views me as a transaction. And if that's how he views me, then I do not owe him respect.
Mm-mm.
If he showed me any ounce of respect, anything, when okay, we could talk, but it's like, no, absolutely not. Absolutely the fuck not.
So just to clarify, so you can take us home, you're not against people conceiving through donors. You just are calling for way, way more regulation.
Yes, I think donor conception can be a wonderful tool to build a family. I really do. And I do believe that it can be wonderful if it was ethical and it was donor conceived centered, which it just is painfully not, certainly in the United States. And I want it to work. I would love to see it work. I mean, look, unless I see a scientific study that proves to me that no matter what, donor conception is not ethical, I will continue to fight for donor conception to be available. Absolutely. Yeah, unless I find out donor conception is like literally physically dangerous and there is just no way to safely, ethically do it, then we can have that conversation and cross that bridge. But I see no such proof as of right now. And yeah, I absolutely want donor conception to work. I really, really do. So we've done sibling caps, anonymity. I also want to see mandated verification of medical histories. Because as we said, these are typically like 19-year-olds coming in and they're like, yo, fill out your family's medical history. And they're like, okay. But then they're like, oh, I shouldn't mention that my mom had breast cancer because I really want that $1,400.
They're purposely
going
gonna
put that on. Okay, cool, whatever. Y'all.
Yeah.
Yo, it's rush week. I gotta go.
They also could be donor conceived.
And they could
not
be conceived
even know.
Oh God, I'm sure donor conceived people have donated. And so then what ends up happening is the donors lie about their medical history, which we have found. And that becomes the only scrap of something. And we've also found donor conceived people who have connected with their donors have shown them the donor profile and they've been like, I didn't write that. That's wrong. Like, I did not write that. And definitely clinics and cryobanks have taken some creativity license, apparently, with some of the donor profiles. They've taken a little liberty with it. And there needs to be some mandate, something. The other piece about it that I really do genuinely believe is we also need anti-discrimination laws to protect donors. Right now, as of last year, 2% of active donors were Black. That's it. Washington posted a full article on it. Highly suggest reading it. In 2023, I believe it is up to 5%. And we've had plenty of donors of color have come forward being like, I was turned away from being a donor and I don't know why, because I'm literally exactly what they're looking for. And there are plenty of recipient parents of color who are like, I can't find a fucking donor that matches my
religion,
my partner's ethnicity background, our family's ethnicity background, and they are forced to use a white donor. What does that sound like?
Eugenics.
Exactly. So there needs to be anti-discrimination laws in place to protect donors because it's ridiculous. And I do think what we need to do is change the way on how we look at donors because we really are attracting the wrong people. We are attracting people who are just very much in it for themselves, narcissistic intentions. We need to be attracting altruistic donors. Right now, so there's no guidelines. The only screening that is required federally by the FDA is an STD test. That's it. Everything else, like genetic testing and anything that is a guideline that ASRM puts out, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And these clinics and cryobanks don't have to follow any of them. Now, ASRM guidelines say that like you need to turn away donors who have X, who have Y, who have Z, who blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's dumb. I think that that's not the right way to do it. In my personal opinion, because again, we gotta take the eugenics out of it. We should not be turning away donors for their own medical issues or genetic mutations that run in their family. We really shouldn't be. Where the money and the focus should be on is full disclosure. The family, because it always is like they don't understand. Families, what they're looking for is typically almost always a carbon copy as close as you can get to the non-genetic parent. That's what they want. That's what they want. And so in my opinion, what the focus should be on is donors who are able to provide a full medical history, that they are willing to be like, yep, here's my HIPAA waiver, go contact all of my doctors, here you go. That is who we should be going after. Donors who are comfortable with full disclosure. We also need donors who are comfortable with no anonymity and who are like, yes, I am willing to have communication, maybe even seeing the kid a little bit here and there, 100%. Those are the right fucking donors. That's who we need to be going after. Now, I say this as somebody who I'm a stand-up comedian, And I do absolutely fully believe that like there needs to be a panel of geneticists, of doctors, of people on ethics committees, people who are literal historians and understand eugenics far better than I, really like making like really deciding what ethically is the best. But as far as I've been able to talk to with geneticists and everybody, we have to stop turning away donors for genetic differences. It's just it's not where we should putting the emphasis on. It should be on full disclosure. And then the parents get to consent to the donor and go, I want donor A or I want donor H. And they have full disclosure and consent and informed consent. That is what it should be on, is not trying to do the way that they're doing it now. It's just ethically fraught.
Yeah, because they're really just opening up the floor for people who are very eager to wash their hands of something and either, and that's not always the case, obviously, but either make a super quick buck or perpetuate their own gene pool to a massive extent because they
with no emotional connection. Yeah.
I would also really want to see clinics making it easier to bring in known donors, like friends and family members. Like a family member, I mean like your brother-in-law or something like that. I do think that they should be making it much easier as a way to also combat the Facebook groups of donors, which are just, oh God, fraught with serial donors, and they're really nasty and gross. But yeah, I think that those are sort of like the top contenders. There's way more like that I think should be like we need mandatory counseling for recipient parents and donors. I do think there should be a basic, not a full criminal, but like a basic background check on recipient parents to like make sure that like they're not on the sex offender list. Because right now there's just nothing, and all you need is like a couple $1,000s to get your hand on a kid. And that isn't. It's a half adoption. It's a half adoption. I know that a lot of people don't like to think about it that way, but it's a fucking half adoption. We should have a little bit more of a view on it in terms of like just double checking to make sure people are not on a sex offender list. And yeah, I mean, and then like, there's so many international law kind of crap that we got to do. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's my start.
Well, thank you. And thank you for doing the work and the research that we haven't. Honestly, you've been A, lovely to talk to, and then B, your presence online is very much appreciated by all of us.
Thank you. That honestly, that's as long as that's all I care about. And I will do it as long as it's wanted and needed.
Well, you are wanted and needed. And to take us home, tell us where we can find you, what you have going on, what you want to promote.
All right. So my handle on TikTok and Instagram is @LauraHighFive. So please follow me there. You can also follow me.
Is that 5 spelled out?
No, 5 is a number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Also on Threads and on Twitter. I will not call it fucking X, but don't follow me on Twitter. Don't waste your time. Just follow me. Don't do that. Facebook, just look up Laura High, High. I'll come up. YouTube, Laura High. My podcast, Insemination, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And I also do a video version of it as well. It's on YouTube. I will say I'm particularly excited about October 15th. I will be headlining in New Orleans at the Howling Wolf. Now, I need everybody to mark your calendars on October 15th, okay? I can't announce it yet, but on October 15th in New Orleans, there is going to be that afternoon a donor-conceived event that I am right now planning and I am working on right now. And if you are donor-conceived or you're an ally and you care and you want to support, save that day for me, okay? And what you can also do is you can go to my social media, you can go to my website, wherever it is, and there are links. If you go to my Linktree, especially, that's the easiest way to go to it. It's on all my stuff. There is a button to buy a shirt. It sucks when the evidence can talk. And there's also a GoFundMe. all proceeds for the shirt, everything from the GoFundMe is going to fund this donor conceived event, because we're trying to fund as many donor conceived people to get there as possible to help cover a hotel, maybe give some money for transportation, some food, whatever we can do, because it is important to have representation. We need as much representation as possible. So please donate. If you can't be there, $5, $10, $20, whatever you can do. That would be the incredible and amazing. And then that night, October 15th, I will be headlining in New Orleans, and part of the proceeds from that show will be going to donor conceived causes. But yeah, I think that's my little Rolodex of crap. So I'm fairly easy to find. I'm very loud.
Amazing. Well, Laura, thank you again for joining us. I'm so glad we all got the chance to meet and lament and commiserate and celebrate together. And yes, everyone mark your calendars for October 15th. Go follow Laura on every social media network. She brightens my day every day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's specifically your donor conceived, please reach out. I always love connecting with the community, and I will always try my hardest to connect you to the resources that you need, because everyone needs something different. And and for the donor conceived people who are out there, connect with your community. That is my biggest piece of advice. I promise it is healing. You may not think you need it. I didn't think I needed it. I promise it is good. Go connect with your community. They will be there for you, and they are tight-knit as hell, and they're feral in the best way possible.
And I can definitely attest by saying that the first thing that Laura did when people connected her to us was ask us what we needed. So
thank you so much, Laura. We try to come into this with as little expectations as we can, and you really blew my socks off, and I think that your cause is just incredibly admirable.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I can't continue. I cannot wait to hear you guys continue to tell your story, because it is so goddamn unique, and it needs to be understood. Because just we need to understand all of the different variables to donor conception and adoption, because hey, donor conceived people and adoptees, we are siblings of the baby the baby business. And in my opinion, and you guys certainly are a combination of it, the way that we can combat we can get the adoption industry, help get adoptees get their rights. And the way that we can also combat the fertility industry as well is our two communities actively need to work together.
Bind together, yeah.
Solidarity. There's so much understanding, even though not everything we've gone through together, there's still so much empathy. And I have always felt so unbelievably seen and understood by our adoptee counterparts. And they are just such a phenomenal force.
amazing. All right. Well, thank you
That's
so
a
much,
mic drop
Laura.
if I've ever heard one.
You have been the best. We will see you on the other side.
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Laura.
What a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to have Laura on. Honestly, I have to admit, before her interview, as the
We'd
Scump
be
Sisters,
terrified.
no,
Scump Sisters were shaking in their boots.
we were a little
Skirt.
bit nervous to have her on because we thought that it would be like the first major dissenting opinion that we'd had on the podcast. Because if you don't consume all of Laura's media, you might get the wrong impression that she's just against donor conception altogether, which does happen. A lot of people obviously think that if you can't naturally conceive, you shouldn't conceive, yada, yada. So I overall was just super pleasantly surprised to hear that she just wants things done the right way. And then she still brought a bunch of really amazing storytelling and laughter and levity to that entire thing. I don't think any of us will ever think of a hotel lobby the same.
Nope.
Definitely not.
I really love talking to people that are smarter than me. And Laura is. And she's just so, like you said, she's so quippy. She's so easy to kind of bring along, and I just so appreciate the education that she was able, because are not very educated about the industry as a whole. And so some of these things that she brought up are not things that I've ever taken the time to consider or even been introduced to those kind of concepts. And we'll see, obviously, kind of like a little sneak peek of what's to come still in this season. Those kind of themes will be interlaced throughout, I'm sure. So just really, really valuable information from Laura. And again, she's just so magnanimous and charismatic and hilarious, and all the love for her.
Yeah, our most educational interview yet.
Yes.
I know. I found it super fascinating, and I just love how knowledgeable she is, but also how personable she is, and how we just like kind of fell in. We were all, like we said, terrified, and she made it not terrifying at all in any respect, and was just one of my favorite interviews, I think, so far. And I would love to learn more from her, and just open up my mind to everything that can be changed. And I also love that she, while she is like, does not agree with the industry and the way that they do things, she still is like, she has no like resentment toward her parents at all. She just saw a need for regulation and something that needed to be changed. And even though she didn't have super like strong negative feelings towards like her parents or their decision, she still saw this need and is working to change it. So
very passionate.
Laura, thank you so much for coming on. You have fans in all of us. We appreciate your activism, and we will always be cheering for you. In the meantime, we are signing off. We hope you leave feeling a little bit more normal in your own family dynamic, curious about the world around you, and excited for the possibilities. Have a good week. Take things in stride and leave people better than you found them. We'll see you next time. Bye. It's Monday. Shit is wild out there, and welcome to another episode of Luke, Who Is Your Father? I'm your host, Ricky.
This is Jules.
I'm Kenny.
And we are so happy to have you once again.
Yeah.
You're drawing a major blank.
Well, okay. 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 I'm going to just do that over. Let's do that. Okay. It really throws off the flow if you don't do one thing, apparently. Whoo!
Do you want a little refresher?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. It's Monday. Shit is still wild out there, and welcome to another episode of Luke, Who Is Your Father? I'm your host, Ricky.
This is Jules.
I'm Kenny.
Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Luke is in your father.
Two, if we want to gossip.
Luke is in your father. the new one.
Welcome to
Oh.
another episode of Luke is in Your Father, where we talk about all of the Lukes and the respective ways where they have been in your father. We are well into season 2, where we have turned the mics over to our guests. And we do just want to remind you that all experiences and opinions belong to our guests, who we were so lucky to have this season. If you are not familiar with who we are triplets separated at birth, and we told that whole story the first season. So if you want some laughs and a lot of tears, go back and listen to that.
And you'll get to listen to Who Was in Us.
We so appreciate you, the listeners. You have been leaving.
Oh, we're good. Okay, I'm good.
Thank you for all of your support thus far.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Why didn't you do that? For the intro?
Yeah, for the fucking.
Oh my God. Okay.